All right, so today we're diving into a topic that some might think, at first glance is a bit dry, Mongol military tactics. But I think especially for a learner like you, this will be pretty exciting.
Yeah, I agree.
We've got excerpts from a proposed history podcast, and it's packed with all sorts of cool details about, how these warriors built this massive empire across continents.
And it really changes the way we think of the Mongols, not just this wild horde, but these brilliant strategists.
Exactly, like these so-called barbarians were actually masterminds.
Right.
And so our goal today is to, figure out how they did it. We're talking Genghis Khan, we're talking empire building against all odds. But how'd they pull it off?
Well, get ready to be surprised. We're going to be looking at psychological warfare, crazy adaptability, and leadership lessons that still apply today.
Okay, so first up, the script talks about the Mongols' legendary speed. Obviously, they were incredible horsemen, but it's more than just riding fast, right?
Oh, absolutely. They're like the ancient world's special forces,
Yeah.
covering huge distances incredibly fast. Yeah. One source I saw said a Mongol army could travel like 100 miles in a day.
100 miles?
Yeah. And it wasn't just about, getting from one place to another. The speed itself was a weapon.
I see.
It was like shock and awe. Imagine you're getting ready for a siege and boom, the Mongols are already there surrounding your city.
Wow.
Totally demoralizing. They used flanking maneuvers, hit-and-run tactics, just kept their enemies off balance.
They like weaponized agility.
Exactly. And they had this amazing tactic called the Tuluma.
Kaluma.
Yeah, basically a fake retreat. They'd lure the enemy into a trap.
But that's clever.
Pretend to run away, draw the enemy out, and then bam, turn around and counterattack.
Could you bring that down a bit more? I'm not familiar with Tuluma. I bet our listeners are curious too.
Of course. So picture this. The Mongols are up against, say, some heavily armored European knights. Charging straight at them would be, well, messy.
Right.
So they engage, then suddenly they turn tail and run. The knights, thinking they've won, charge after them.
Into a trap.
Yep. A carefully planned ambush. The Mongols, using their mobility and archery skills, surround the knights and, well, you can imagine. This Tuluma, it really played on their enemies' expectations.
Wow, it's like a classic bait and switch. It makes you wonder if modern militaries still study these tactics.
I bet they do. The ideas behind them are timeless. The Mongols understood that war is a mental game as much as a physical one.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another point. They weren't stuck in one way of attacking. They were like strategic chameleons, changing their tactics based on who they were fighting.
Exactly. They were incredibly flexible. There's a great example from the Battle of Langdika. The Mongols were facing heavily armored knights again and knew a direct attack was a bad idea. So they used hit-and-run tactics, harassed them with archers, wore them down.
Instead of brute force, they took a more guerrilla approach.
Exactly. They analyzed the enemy, found their weakness, and adapted. It's an important lesson for anyone, especially a learner like yourself, dealing with new challenges all the time.
Right? Rigid plans don't work. You got to be able to adjust.
Yeah.
So we've got speed, adaptability.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. The Mongols were masters of psychological warfare. They'd start attacking their enemies' minds before even firing an arrow.
Oh, I like that. Tell me more.
They'd spread rumors about their massive numbers, exaggerate stories about how fierce they were, even use tricks to make their armies seem bigger.
So basically scare tactics.
Right. They wanted to break their enemy's spirit before the battle even began.
That's brilliant and a little terrifying. It shows that battles are won in people's minds just as much as on the battlefield.
And it's not just about war, right? It applies to negotiations, public speaking, even just everyday life. Perception is powerful.
So the Mongols were master psychologists as well as warriors. And they did all of this without, Twitter or anything. How did they communicate so well over such huge distances? I mean, this was pre-internet.
Oh, that's a great question, and the script actually goes into detail about that. They had a really incredible communication system with signal fires, flags, messengers.
Wow, so they had like an ancient version of the CIA or something. And it wasn't just gathering information, it was sharing it effectively, right?
Precisely. And remember, this was way before instant messaging. The Mongols' commitment to fast, reliable communication was truly groundbreaking.
It's amazing how relevant that is today. For learners and leaders, staying informed, communicating clearly, those are timeless skills. And speaking of being on the same page, the script talks about another myth about the Mongols, that they were just a chaotic horde. It seems their success relied on a very different approach.
You're right. They were anything but disorganized. Mongol warriors were highly disciplined, trained not just in combat, but in complex maneuvers and a strict code of conduct.
So it wasn't just about individual skill, but functioning as one unit.
Exactly. That discipline let them execute these complicated battle plans under pressure. It was a coordinated effort. Everyone knew their role. And Genghis Khan was at the heart of it all. He was more than just a conqueror.
It seems like he really knew how to bring people together, create a sense of unity and loyalty among his troops.
Absolutely. He instilled mutual respect, accountability, built a culture where everyone felt valued, responsible for the mission. Imagine uniting a diverse army like that. That's leadership on a whole other level.
And it shows a principle that's still true today. Shared goals, individual talent, and a strong sense of unity. That's the recipe for achieving amazing things. So we've got speed, adaptability, psychological warfare, communication, and discipline.
Yeah.
They really had all the bases covered.
And there's more. One thing that struck me was their flexibility during battle. They didn't just stick to a rigid plan no matter what.
Really? That's pretty impressive, especially back then.
It was. They planned meticulously, but also knew that battles rarely go as planned. They could read the situation and adapt on the fly.
So they weren't afraid to change course in the middle of a fight. That takes guts and quick thinking.
It does. It's a key leadership lesson. Plans are guidelines, not rules set in stone. Being able to pivot, respond to new information, essential in today's world.
Like the saying goes, no plan survives contact with the enemy. But talking about leadership, the script mentions something unique about the Mongol military, a decentralized command structure.
Right. Genghis Khan trusted his generals to make decisions on the ground without needing his constant approval.
So they had a lot of autonomy. That's unusual, especially for a military back then.
It was, but it allowed them to react quickly and efficiently. Leaders on the front lines could assess the situation and adapt without waiting for orders from miles away.
It's like they were running a prototype agile organization centuries before the term existed.
That's a great way to put it. This decentralized structure had another benefit. It fostered a sense of responsibility among those leaders.
Because they were trusted to make important decisions.
Exactly. Genghis Khan understood that empowered commanders were more invested in the mission's success. It created a culture of trust and accountability, vital to their victories. But let's not forget the mental toll of their conquests. Imagine fighting in vast, hostile territories, often outnumbered. They must have had incredible mental strength.
Right. Talk about a high-pressure environment. What did the script say about how they stayed focused and driven under those conditions?
Psychological resilience was key. Genghis Khan and his commanders built a strong sense of confidence in their troops through rigorous training, thorough preparation, and a belief in their strategies.
So it was a combination of being well-prepared and having unshakable self-belief. That's a powerful recipe for success.
Absolutely. And that confidence grew with every victory. It reinforced their belief in themselves and their methods, allowing them to stay calm and focused, even when facing huge obstacles.
It's amazing how their mental strength gave them an edge, even before the fighting started. Their enemies must have sensed that unwavering confidence, making them even more formidable.
Definitely. Their self-assurance was often intimidating. It conveyed the message that they were facing an opponent who truly believed in their capabilities. But conquering and controlling huge territories also means managing resources carefully. Did the sources discuss how the Mongols handled that aspect?
That's a great point. Logistics are crucial, even today. What did you discover about their resource management?
Get ready to be surprised. They were incredibly efficient. They traveled light, relying on their herds for food, and were meticulous about managing supplies. They didn't have these huge supply lines and baggage trains like other armies at the time.
So they were lean and mean, able to move fast and strike unexpectedly. That's brilliant. It reminds me of how startups today prioritize agility and lean operations.
It's an interesting parallel. By minimizing their logistical burden, they could move with speed and flexibility, adapt to changing conditions, and seize opportunities. They didn't conquer for resources. They brought resources with them, a very sustainable approach to warfare.
So we're seeing a pattern here. Masters of efficiency on and off the battlefield. But their empire's impact went beyond conquest. The sources mention something called the Pax Mongolica.
Ah, yes. The Pax Mongolica. It refers to.
Hold that thought. We'll dive into the Pax Mongolica and what it reveals about the Mongols' legacy after a quick word from our sponsors.
Just kidding. No sponsors, no breaks, just pure, unadulterated Mongol knowledge. We'll be right back with more.
That's good.
So we were just about to explore this thing called the Pax Mongolica. Sounds kind of peaceful, which isn't exactly what comes to mind when you think Mongols, right?
Yeah, it is a bit of a contradiction. But the Pax Mongolica is really a fascinating part of their history. Basically, it was this period of, relative peace and stability across Asia, even parts of Europe, when the Mongol Empire was at its peak. Lasted for about a century, from the mid-1200s to the mid-1300s.
So their military power actually led to peace. That's not what I expected. It's a bit of a twist, right? But it makes sense when you consider that the Mongol Empire, even though it was built through conquest, was surprisingly tolerant and practical. They focused on securing trade routes, established standardized laws across their territories, even encouraged, cultural exchange between different regions.
So they weren't just focused on conquering and looting. They actually, tried to build a stable society.
Exactly. They understood that a prosperous empire would, in the end, benefit them as rulers. And the results were pretty amazing. The Pax Mongolica saw trade flourish, new ideas spread, and cultural exchange thrive. It was a time of incredible connection between East and West.
Wow, I had no idea. So the Mongols were more than just, fierce warriors.
That's right. Their story shows us that even the most powerful military forces, under the right circumstances, can create peace and progress.
That's a timely reminder, especially today when there's so much conflict in the world.
I agree. The Pax Mongolica proves that stability and cooperation can come out of even the most chaotic times. It speaks to this, fundamental human desire for peace and prosperity.
Makes you wonder what other misconceptions we have about history.
Yeah.
But getting back to the Mongols, I'm curious how they kept control of such a massive and diverse empire. Did the sources have any insight into their administration?
Oh, yeah, they did. And it's interesting how they took bits from existing systems and added their own innovations. For example, they adopted the Or script, a pretty advanced writing system, to manage the empire. It helped streamline communication and record keeping across, this vast territory.
That's smart. No point in reinventing the wheel, right? Shows their practicality and adaptability.
Exactly. They weren't afraid to adopt what worked, even if it came from cultures they'd conquered. They also set up this really sophisticated postal system called the YAM, which allowed for quick communication and travel across the empire.
A postal system. Impressive, considering the distances involved. How'd that work?
Imagine a network of relay stations along major routes. Messengers with fresh horses would travel between them, carrying messages, documents, even goods. It enabled remarkably fast communication across vast distances.
So they weren't just good at military logistics, but administrative logistics, too.
Exactly. It was a complex, well-organized system, essential for control and trade. Just another example of how their attention to detail and ability to innovate contributed to their success.
It seems they were always trying to improve their systems and processes. That's something any modern organization could learn from, constantly looking ahead.
Absolutely. The Mongols show us that success isn't just about power, it's about organization, adaptability, and a willingness to learn and grow.
Yeah, and going back to that decentralized command structure, it seems like they really embraced empowering people on the ground. It wasn't just about top-down control, but about fostering a sense of ownership.
You got it. Genghis Khan understood that true power comes from empowering others. By delegating authority and trusting his commanders, he created this agile and responsive organization.
And that probably built loyalty and commitment among those commanders, knowing they were trusted.
For sure, it built a culture where people were driven by responsibility and ownership, not just fear, and this went beyond the military. The Mongols were remarkably tolerant of different religions and cultures within their empire. They saw diversity as a strength, not a weakness.
That's surprising given their, reputation as conquerors. But it makes sense strategically. Tolerance would have made it easier to manage such a diverse empire.
Exactly. Forcing their beliefs on others would have led to resistance and instability. They were more interested in keeping order and promoting trade. This pragmatic approach helped them gain cooperation from local leaders and integrate various populations into their empire.
It's remarkable how they combine their military might with this, like pragmatism and adaptability, a rare combination in history.
It shows their strategic brilliance. They knew building a lasting empire needed more than brute force. It needed understanding human nature, a willingness to learn from others, and a dedication to stability and prosperity.
So are you saying the Mongols weren't just about conquering and destroying, they were also builders and innovators?
Exactly. They were a complex civilization that left a huge mark on history. Their story challenges our assumptions and reminds us that even those we see as, quote, barbarians can have amazing qualities and do extraordinary things.
And it seems they were masters of diplomacy, administration, and cultural integration, not just military strategy. They were playing a much more sophisticated game than most people realize.
That's right. Their story is a masterclass in leadership, adaptability, and strategic thinking. It's full of insights that are still relevant today, offering valuable lessons for anyone navigating the modern world.
It's clear the Mongols were much more than just conquerors. They were builders, innovators, and even peacemakers in their own way. But every empire falls eventually. What led to the end of the Mongol Empire? And what lessons can we learn from its decline?
That's a great question, and one we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
All right, so we're back, ready to wrap up our Mongol deep dive. We've seen their incredible conquests, their strategic genius, their surprising talent for, governance and even peacemaking. But like all empires, the Mongols eventually declined. What brought them down, and what can a learner today learn from their fall?
Yeah, it's a question that's fascinated historians forever. And like most big historical events, there's no easy answer. It was a bunch of things, both from within and outside, that kind of chipped away at their empire.
Okay, so let's start with the internal challenges. What was going on within the Mongol Empire?
One major factor was just the sheer size and diversity of the empire. I mean, think about it. At its peak, it stretched from the Pacific all the way to Eastern Europe. That's a mind-boggling mix of cultures, languages, religions. Governing something that huge, well, it was tough, even for a system as adaptable as the Mongols.
Like too many cooks in the kitchen. But on a global scale.
Exactly. Keeping control from the center got harder and harder as the empire grew. Communication delays, logistical headaches, finding capable administrators to handle such diverse populations, it all added up.
And I imagine those local differences, those tensions would started to cause problems, right?
Oh, absolutely. As time passed, the leaders who came after Genghis Khan, while often capable, couldn't maintain that same level of unity and control that he had. You start seeing regional power struggles, infighting within the ruling family, and the empire begins to fragment.
So internal divisions were a big factor. What about external pressures? Did anything from outside contribute to their decline?
Definitely. As the Mongols' initial momentum slowed down, they met increasing resistance from the people they had conquered. Those who had initially surrendered started to fight back, exploiting any weakness they saw.
It's like when there's a power vacuum, someone's going to try to fill it.
Exactly. And remember, the Mongol Empire was constantly on the move, expanding, looking for new conquests. While successful at first, these campaigns eventually overstretched them, created vulnerabilities that their enemies could take advantage of.
So it's this mix of internal and external pressures kind of feeding off each other.
Right. It's rarely one single thing that takes down an empire. It's more like this, complex web of factors that weakens it over time. And for the Mongols, we can't forget about the Black Death.
Oh, right. That devastating plague in the 1300s.
Yeah. That pandemic tore through the Mongol Empire, wiping out huge chunks of the population, disrupting trade routes. It crippled their economy and put even more strain on their administration, which, accelerated their decline.
It's a reminder that even the strongest empires are vulnerable to things they can't control.
Absolutely. Disasters, pandemics, unexpected events. They can throw everything off course.
So even though the Mongols were masters of strategy and organization, they couldn't escape the forces of history. But their story isn't just about their fall, right? It's also about the amazing things they accomplished and the legacy they left behind.
Exactly. And even in their decline, there are lessons for us. They highlight the importance of adapting, of anticipating change, and understanding that no empire, no matter how powerful, lasts forever.
It's a humbling thought that even the greatest success isn't guaranteed to last.
And it really emphasizes the importance of constant learning, evolving, adapting to new challenges. Something a learner like yourself understands inherently.
Absolutely. The Mongols, even with their reputation as conquerors, were also innovators, organizers, and even, in their own way, champions of peace and cultural exchange. Their story is full of insights that still resonate today.
It reminds us that history isn't just about dates and names. It's a source of wisdom that can help us understand the present and make better choices for the future. The Mongols, in both their victories and defeats, teach us about leadership, strategy, resilience, and the complexities of power.
Well said. This deep dive has been incredible, showing us that the Mongols were so much more than just, fierce warriors. They were a complex and influential force that shaped the world as we know it.
Their story really highlights the power of human ingenuity, ambition, and the lasting impact we can have on the world, even long after we're gone.
So, to our listeners, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning from the past. The Mongols are just one example of how history can teach us valuable lessons and inspire us to see the world in new ways.
Until next time, keep those aha moments coming.
And remember, learning never stops. Happy learning.